This week on the Woven Energy Podcast.
The country of origin is completely irrelevant to my shamanism. Although, having said that, when I studied shamanism academically, I wouldn't have got away with saying that. Yeah, in Mongolia, you've got Tengar, Dehil, and Tam. It goes on and on and on and on. There are applications of the three realms, understanding of the three realms in a universal sense. They've got nothing to do with the mind, the body, or the spirit. What I think I'll do is I'll give you an example of how these realms can apply. They can apply in many, many different ways in life. Altan Dehil is the name of the Earth Mother, the spirit who in Mongol tradition and Siberian tradition is said to give the shaman his drum. The shaman doesn't travel to these three realms in the spirit journey. What the spirit journey does is stepping outside of these three realms. What in Japanese shamanism is known as the Tokoyu no Kuni, the Yonder realm.
Hey guys, this is Joe from the Woven Energy Podcast, and welcome to episode 2. I'm here once again with Damon Smith to talk about practical shamanism. Damon studied shamanism extensively at university as well as practicing it. He's my mentor, all-round nice guy, and has been described as knowing a lot of things about a lot of things. So I want to thank him very much for giving up his time to be here and provide us all with a view of shamanism from the ground up and from his own experience. So if you've listened to episode 1, it was a good overview or introduction of shamanism and Damon in general. We covered quite a lot of ground very quickly and in not a tremendous amount of depth, so hopefully it's left you with a healthy sense of intrigue. But you're here on episode 2, so from now on we're going to be focusing on one thing throughout the episode and really getting to grips with that. So the idea now is to try and tackle separate topics and go deep into them. Shamanism is such a huge concept, which quite literally encompasses everything, and getting a real flavour of understanding it's not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight for me, and it hasn't happened for me yet anyway. And I don't think it will happen overnight for anybody. It's just a fundamental worldview shift that stretches far beyond what we might pigeonhole as quote-unquote shamanism. It's going to take some time, and I'm only just starting out on this journey myself. So for this episode, we're going to take a look at the threefold nature of reality. That's our theme for today. So you might be familiar with this concept from the shamanic model as the upper world, the middle world, and the lower world, or the upper realm, middle realm, and the lower realm. However, the underlying concepts behind this are so apparent through myths, legends, and symbols from all cultures and societies from around the world that we're going to start right at the beginning and try and put the shamanic model into some form of context. So in this episode, we talk about where we can find the three worlds in various different cultures and societies from around the world. And we go a little bit more in depth into the symbology of the world tree, which kind of gives the best flavor of the three realms with respect to shamanism specifically. Also, how these realms relate to us in a practical way, which can give you a flavor of the three realms, kind of on an experiential basis. So I'm going to bring Damon on board. Damon, how are you doing?
I'm good, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm not bad. So
it's quite interesting what you're saying about understanding shamanism not happening overnight. I feel I've been working on this now for 30 something years, and there's certainly nothing overnight about it, and I'm still learning. This is a subject that is as big as the universe that we live in, and so I don't think that the degree or extent of somebody's involvement in shamanism, depth of understanding of shamanism, is any kind of barrier to experiencing shamanism. You experience shamanism right from day one. We talked about Chalicity last time. And right from day one, you're experiencing shamanism. You're not experiencing all of it. Nobody ever could. But I think that rushing or attempting to rush it is never a good idea. And I think looking at that, the time that it takes, it's what you find as you go on is that you look back and you realize that some of the greatest things were there in the journey. You just didn't realize it at the time. And so, you asked me last time, what does it take to become a shaman? Actually, to become involved in shamanism takes just the first step. And I think that the subject that you've picked for this particular podcast is quite useful for that. because I think the world tree, the tree of life, the three realms, the Mitsutomori, this kind of concept is very, very familiar to people, without them actually realizing it.
Well, let's start at the beginning then. This is a huge, huge question. I know this is a huge question, but what are the three worlds?
The three worlds are three aspects of the great cycle of nature, of the natural world. You can think of them as three parts of one whole. So, unlike a lot of terms in shamanism, we do have a really, really good English word for describing these three realms, which is the Trinity. Obviously that word's been appropriated by Christianity in a fairly big way, so that it has a very specific meaning: God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. But when you understand shamanism, you start to see where that's come from, and actually it's very, very obvious where that's come from. The three realms have lots of different names. They are found almost universally in shamanistic cultures and esoteric circles, and they're found throughout time. So in mythology, we find them in Siberian and Mongolian mythology, but we also find them in the mythology of the indigenous cultures of both North and South America. We find them in Greek mythology, we find them in Indian mythology, pretty much throughout the world. They are presented in many different forms. The one that I particularly like is the world tree. If you think of the world tree as
just before we move on to the world tree, we've said that we can find this everywhere. Just to put it into some sort of a context, you can see the three realms you've mentioned the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. There's also just the concept of heaven, earth, and hell, which is a concept you can see all over the world. We have the Celtic Triskelion, or the Triskel. I know you know a few from Japan.
Yeah, Takamagahara, Nakatsukuni, and Yomi no Kuni.
We've got Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. In
Mongolia, you've got Tengar, Dehil, and Tam. It goes on and on and on and on.
It's amazing. It's amazing how it's just...
Well,
this concept is everywhere.
It isn't. It isn't. If you look at religions that have come from human beings, that is, religions that are effectively passed on by word of mouth from one person to another, that revolve around faith in what some originator of that religion has said, then if you thought shamanism and animism were like that, then you might be surprised to find this same concept all over the world. Incidentally, one we didn't mention is that the three lines of the trigrams, the Jing,
which plays a major part
China.
in our teachings. Yeah.
So
let's go back to the world tree then. So I know this is your favorite way of depicting
Sure.
it.
Well, just what I was going to say was that if you see shamanism as something where the teacher is not a human being, where the teacher is nature itself, then we shouldn't be surprised to see this all over the world, because even if you weren't taught this, it's possible for nature to teach you this. So in terms of the world tree, you can think of it in Mongol, they call it Avruk Tomot, a great tree. You can think of it as having three different major parts. You have the branches and leaves, the Modni Mochir. You have the trunk of the tree, the solidity of the tree, and also the part of the tree that transfers nutrients and water around the tree. That's a Modni Ichbi, that's the trunk of the tree. And then you have the roots, the place where the nutrients are drawn in. Those nutrients, certainly in deciduous woodland, those nutrients having come very much from the breakdown of the previous generation of the leaves, by bacteria in the soil. So that would be Modni Uch. That's the receptive realm, or the place where the tree touches the earth, if you like. In analogy, the way the world tree is used, it's not used for, to be a tree in the world. It's used as an analogy for a universal process that goes on at all times, in all places, and all three of these realms, in inverted commas, they're not in three different places. They're physically in exactly the same place. And that place extends throughout the world. So when we take the word Trinity, which is why it's such a good word, it has the tri of meaning three, but it has the ity from the word unity, which means that they're actually united together. They're not physically separate. And if you think of how a tree works, the photosynthesis takes place in the leaves. This is where virtually all the things that the tree needs are created. The energy, the processed nutrients, the things that the tree needs, and then those nutrients and energy are transported through the layer of wood that immediately underlies the bark. It goes around, surrounds the tree. And they're transported down the trunk so that they can be used by all parts of the tree. At the same time, so that's kind of where the creativity is going on, is in the leaves, or rather, to put it the other way around, the creative aspect of the great cycle of nature is analogized in terms of the branches and the leaves of the tree. The manifest world, the world we find ourselves in at any given moment, is the result of that. So that's the modern Ichbi, that's the trunk of the tree. So in terms of the world tree, the world tree image, very often the world is pictured at the center in the trunk, with the roots below and the branches above, and the world itself being in between. As I mentioned in a deciduous woodland, the creative aspect of the creative realm has results. And those results become the raw material for the next cycle, if you like, the next creative input. Those, for instance, that get the trees, certainly a deciduous tree is another good example. The leaves fall in the autumn. They're digested by bacteria in the soil. The nutrients seep into the soil, and those nutrients can be taken up again by the roots or by other plants. But effectively, the results of the creative realm become the receptive realm. They become the modniuch. They become what's analogized in the tree roots, so that they then become the raw material that the creative realm then proceeds to use in continuously generating the manifest world, the world that we live in at any given moment, the modern Ichbi. So if you think of these three things as one, as a great cycle, you can think of them also as a cycle that's continued and continued and continued since the beginning of time. And those three things, they were there, those three things, or some flavor of those three things was there at the beginning of time. And what they have is they have echoes down through the generations. So in some ways, these things are not the things themselves, but they're the echoes of the things that were involved in the creation of the universe. They interact with each other, and they have a very, very close relationship with each other, and understanding that relationship is very, very important in shamanism. And each of them has different aspects. They have a changeability, different aspects, so that we see commonalities, common patterns occurring again and again inside nature as a result of the interaction of these three realms. For instance, the waves on the sea, the spiral type of energetic movements, the galaxies, whirlpools, or just water going down a plug hole, typhoons, storms, planets moving around stars, stars moving around in cycles around galaxies, and then galaxies expanding, this kind of expansive aspect, moving away from each other, which is why we know the universe did have a beginning, scientifically speaking, which has been an intuition in shamanism since the beginning.
You've talked about the continuous cycle as a whole. Let's break it down into the three components then, and imagine we've got somebody who's literally just started in on shamanism. He's just researching shamanism, and he's come across these three realms that he thinks a shaman travels to answer questions. There's the upper world for certain things, the lower world for certain things. How would you?
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's not actually strictly true. What the shaman does, the shaman doesn't travel to these three realms in the spirit journey. What the spirit journey does is stepping outside of these three realms. It's stepping out to what in Japanese esotericism, Japanese shamanism is known as the Tokoyu no Kuni, the yonder realm, a kind of fourth realm. That's a place where he can look back at the three realms from outside, and gain knowledge that we don't get as normal human beings in our normal state, from the inside. It's like, if you lived all your life inside a ball, your entire universe would be the inside of that ball unless you stepped outside of it. Now, those three realms, they would be, in analogy, those three realms would be maintaining the ball. They would be maintaining your world and your life inside the ball. The spirit journey takes you outside of that ball and allows you to look back at the three realms, and gain knowledge of what goes on from a bigger perspective, from a perspective throughout all time and throughout all ages, rather than just the here and now.
So what you're saying is a shaman, when he goes on his spirit journey, he doesn't actually travel. He basically travels to what you call the yonder realm, and from the yonder realm, he can see clearly into the three aspects of connecting to the outside world.
He can generally see them more clearly. It's not that he can see clearly, it's just that it gives him a different perspective. Now, you've got to remember that the perspective that we use from day to day, the inside perspective in terms of the three realms, is not unuseful. It's useful. And for the vast majority of things that human beings need to do, certainly as a civilized species, it's perfectly adequate. What it is there are certain things that it's not adequate for, that it's not enough for. And this is the purpose of the spirit journey. I think, as we said in the last episode, shamans are very purposeful. Well, they're stepping outside of the cycle of the three realms, the creative, the manifest, the receptive, and around the receptive becoming the raw material for the creative again. They're stepping outside of that cycle for a purpose. And this purpose that enables them to see clearly is not the fact that they've stepped outside, because stepping outside actually makes things less clear. It brings in a lot of distracting information that isn't there when you're in your normal state of consciousness. Yeah. It's the purpose of the purpose and discipline of the shaman that allows them to see clearly.
This might be going off topic a little bit, but can it actually harm you by going to the yonder realm without a purpose?
Yes. Is that a good enough description? Yes, it's not.
Because
my
my fear is, shamanism is quite a dangerous subject, or it can be. And
it is.
If you're not trained enough, or you don't have enough training.
What you're hinting at is the biggest pitfall in somebody learning to become a shaman. The biggest pitfall is that they will make the mistake that everybody makes, especially if they don't have a guide, they don't have somebody who's been through it to point them in the right direction, or they haven't received enough warning. The big mistake is, in a non-ordinary state of being, you perceive things that your brain is unable to deal with very easily. the big mistake in entering that state is that you will try to attach importance on those things and try to fit them into your manifest realm. That is, you'll try to make sense of them in terms of the manifest realm. What did the fact that I felt that I was floating on clouds mean? What did the fact that I saw this big green and orange rainbow mean? What did the fact that I felt like my words were turning into water? What did that mean?
Thinking all the time.
Exactly.
So you just said that's the manifest realm. That's
the mistake. There lies danger. In that behavior lies danger. What I'm saying is they will try and the danger is to try and make sense of the yonder realm in terms of the manifest realm. And that is not what a shaman does.
Yeah.
I mean, we could probably do several episodes on the pitfalls of learning shamanism.
That was my plan for the next episode, actually. So we are going to look forward to episode 3, and that's going to be all to do with the pitfalls of learning shamanism. The best way forward from the beginning. So, but anyway, let's get back to the 3 realms, and we can look forward to that for episode 3.
So what I would say in terms of the 3 realms is think of them in terms of a spirit, of an underlying spirit. I know the word spirit is very vague in English, but let's think of them in terms of each one of them is an aspect of the spirit that underlies the universe. Now, many different cultures actually give names to these spirits, or spirits, if you like. You'd say God the Father, God the Son, Holy Spirit if you want, but the problem with that particular set of names is that they've had so much exotericism attached to them that they are not particularly helpful when trying to understand esotericism. So, what do you mean by exotericism? Exotericism, if I contrast esotericism with esotericism we described last time. Esotericism is shamanism in a settled society. Remember, shamanism did not develop for use within a settled society. Shamanism developed for use within hunter-gatherer societies that were continuously on the move.
Yeah.
Esotericism, certainly in terms of my definition, is people who live within settled communities that are much bigger than those original hunter-gatherer societies feel that there is still some value in shamanistic technique and would like to preserve that and use it in one way or another to continue to benefit human beings, although in a lesser way than happened with full-blown shamanism among our ancestors. The place of human beings within a civilized society, or the role of human beings within a civilized society, is to a certain extent specialize, but it's also to form a society. There's a certain structural aspect to the formation of a society. Now, when we form societies, historically speaking, we have employed exotericism. That is, rather than religion based on technique like shamanism, esotericism, we employ religion based on faith and belief. That is, rather than taking nature as our teacher and deliberately putting ourselves in the middle of naturalistic experiments in order to gain direct tuition from nature, we instead gain tuition from books and from people, and we start to learn in a catechistical way, a way that, somebody can ask me a question and I can give them an answer, and somebody asks me a question, I can give them an answer, but I don't have to come up with those answers myself. I can learn what it is that I'm supposed to believe, and then I can reply in a formulaic way. And it seems to be that this exoteric way of approaching religion is very popular in civilized societies, and as I think we mentioned last time, there are many advantages to social elites, so the elites within society of that, but also in terms of teaching it. Esotericism is much more difficult to teach than exotericism. It can only be taught on a personal one-to-one kind of one-to-one kind of basis, whereas exotericism can be taught to huge numbers of people via books and
an instruction manual.
Things to learn. Yeah, I feel like an instruction manual for religion, because I no longer have to worry about understanding. I just have to worry about making sure that my beliefs conform to the norm that's established by the religion that the religion that I'm a part of.
So you've got particular experience in Mongolian shamanism. How do they relate to your experience with directly with Mongolian shamanism?
Well, actually, the bulk of my experience is with Japanese and Chinese shamanism. I have studied Mongolian shamanism quite extensively. I did so academically. But I again, the country of origin is completely irrelevant to my shamanism.
Yes.
It may be.
Absolutely.
Although having said that, when I studied shamanism academically, I wouldn't have got away with saying that. Because we're busy cataloguing the particular traits. So let's not talk about Mongolian shamanism.
Well, I asked because you've taught this to me in terms of the Mongolian terms, so I think people might find that interesting.
So you have to, the good point. You have to come down on a terminology, and actually I've got quite a few. So as I mentioned, we got Takamagahara and Akatsukuni Yominokuni, which is Japan. But let's move not too far around the globe to Mongolia. The underlying spirit of the creative realm is called Tengri or Tengri. The underlying spirit of the manifest realm or manifest world is called Dehil. Now, what's very interesting with Dehil is, although Dehil is the name of the spirit of the manifest world, the manifest realm, Altan Dehil is the name of the Earth Mother. The spirit who in Mongol tradition and Siberian tradition is said to give the shaman his drum. It's, I guess, in a bit like the Lady of the Lake giving King Arthur Excalibur, Yeah. And what's also interesting is, although that's a word for the manifest realm, it can also be used as a straightforward way to say nature. So, in one sense, Dehil, the manifest world, is nature. But of course, it's only nature as we perceive it from moment to moment. It's not nature throughout all time, throughout all ages, and in all places. That would be Tenga, Dehil, and the next realm, Tam, together. Tam is in Mongolian tradition, it's the underworld, it's the roots of the tree. So what I think I'll do is I'll give you an example of how a simple example of how these realms can apply. They can apply in many, many different ways in life. And
so you're going to go into how people could experience them and feel them and try and understand them on a personal level.
I'm not going to go into all the ways in which that's possible, because that would be bordering on an infinite list.
It would be a huge project, wouldn't it?
Pick out one very specific example.
Yeah.
And just bear in mind, this is not how they're understood. In shamanism, you come to it through your practice and your technique. You come to an intuitive, or let's not say intuitive, let's say synergistic understanding of the three realms. They're in your understanding in shamanism means understanding through your mind, your body, and your spirit, all united together as one entity, and not disconnected from the rest of nature.
I'll just point out...
That's what we mean by understanding. No, Joe, over to you.
I was just going to point out what you've just said there. That's probably the most famous one that people would recognise, the mind and the body and the spirit. And I think that kind of summarises the three realms perfectly in as perfect as language can.
The reason I don't, and I'm about to proceed to use that as an example, but the reason I don't particularly like using that particular set of three terms is because it's domain specific. Mm-hmm. There are applications of the three realms, or understanding of the three realms in a universal sense. They've got nothing to do with the mind, the body, or the spirit. But that's out in nature. But let me give you an example that conforms the model. So I meet somebody new. One day I met you. And I can't remember how long ago it was, quite a few years now. But when I meet somebody, the first thing they understand about me, or the first thing they encounter about me, is how I deal with the world and how I deal with other people. How do I deal with meeting a new person? This is the roots and branches. This is actually the result. This is the roots, the tam. How do I deal with the world is the result of something, but that the person doesn't see that something. All they see is my strategy, my way of dealing with the world, how I'm logical, how I'm rational, how I'm irrational, how I think about things, how I engage with them, how I talk to them, my body language, all that kind of stuff. But that's the first thing they see about me.
Mm-hmm. And that would be
tam. That would be the roots, or the tree roots. Modniuch, the tree roots. Yeah. So when we get to know each other a bit better, or when I get to know somebody a bit better, my physicality as a person would come more into play. For instance, if it was a romantic relationship, I might start hugging, or maybe even kissing the other person if we're forming a romantic relationship. The initial strategic kind of conversational side of things is bypassed, and they come a step closer to me. They move a step closer, which is a physical kind of interaction, or more physical interaction. This would be dehil. That interaction, it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. I hug my friends, as you know well, and it shows a certain closeness, Mm-hmm. To be honest, as I've gone through life, I've become less resistant to hugging people in general. I consider people friends more and more easily, I guess, as I get older. The point is that's become closer to me. That's dehil. That's me physically.
And the other word we've used is manifest, which makes sense.
Yeah. Right. And then if I'm in a long-term relationship, say with my wife or somebody else who I know really, really well, really, really, really closely, they get to sense my spirit, or indeed in other places where we deliberately merge the spirit between two people, for other purposes. For instance, in the martial arts, we may merge in spirit in order to gain some understanding of what the person who's attacking us is going to do. Give us like an early warning system, like an early warning radar. But in terms of a loving relationship, the two people, in a certain sense, merge in spirit. Now, of course, everybody is merged in spirit with everybody else. This would be Tengler. This would be the branches, the Modni Muchir. At that level, that's the closest point to me, that the person who's moving towards me in that relationship has now reached the closest point to me. They've reached my spirit. But if we wind back the clock to that day the person first met me, the way in which I dealt with them, the first thing that they perceived wasn't the first thing that I initiated. It was my spirit, that my underlying the Tengar within me, that drove my physicality, my physical actions, that grew me as a person, and resulted in my strategy in dealing with other people in combination with my life experience. So what I'm saying is, if you look at the cycle, it's all a matter of perspective. The first thing to me in that thing is Tengar, but the first thing to the other person involved in that interaction is Tam. Mm. So this is why it's a cycle, and this is why they pick a tree and not something else, because a tree isn't a closed entity. The pause in the leaves are open to the environment, and indeed in deciduous trees the leaves fall in the autumn. Mm-hmm. And the roots are not close to the environment. The roots draw in the environment, and this is why it's a tree and not some other structure that has three parts. The other symbols, the other famous symbols, for instance the triskel, the Celtic triskel, they try to show the same thing. But they tend to do it in a cyclical way where one thing leads to another. And a very, very similar symbol in ancient Japanese shamanic understanding is called the Mitsutomoe, the three swirls, three comma shapes that go around in a circular fashion. So that's an example of how the three realms are related to personal interaction, but it's a baseline example. It's an underworld example. This is not what a shaman perceives when they step outside. The point of stepping outside and looking back is that you see all three as one, working as one throughout all time. You don't break them down like that. That breaking down is something we as a civilized species are quite good at, but it's definitely an activity that kind of demonstrates our bias for the lower realm, for the Tam,
Okay, so to wrap this podcast up then, what could somebody do to maybe gain a better flavour or an understanding of the three worlds? Is there something they could go and look at?
Okay, so maybe what I'm going to recommend is that you go away and look at a particular painting. This painting is by a gentleman called Fan Quan from the Song Dynasty in China. And the painting is very, very famous. You shouldn't have too much problem finding it. It's called Travelers Among Mountains and Streams. And I think you'll be able to see, if you, with relatively little degree of perceptiveness, you'll be able to see the three realms in that painting. It's an absolutely beautiful painting, stunning piece of artwork, quite apart from its esoteric roots. But I think what we could do is do an actual full podcast just on that painting.
Mm-hmm.
And
that'll probably give a deeper insight into the three realms, wouldn't it? So
sure.
We'll do
that. But that painting is a wonderful piece of esoteric art, and it's probably the best single pictorial representation of the three realms and what they mean that I've come across.
Mm-hmm. Okay, brilliant. Let's leave it there then, and we'll talk about, so people are going to go away, they're going to have a look at that painting and try and make their mind up about it, and then we'll...
Travelers Among Mountains and Streams by Fan Quan.
Okay, and we'll do a whole podcast on that then. Great stuff, Damon. Thanks very much, and we'll see you in episode 3.
Thanks, John.
Cool.